What's going on, everyone? Happy Monday. Thanks for checking in. Latest Trade to Black presented by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dale's got a good one coming up here today. Margaret, Brodie, CEO of Rubicon Organics, is going to join us in just a moment. They're going to boost their annual output by 40%. Why? Because they received their Health Canada license last week. Their Hope, BC facility, now named Cascadia. Going to bring her on and talk about all that news from last week as well. Editor-in-chief of the Maine Wire, Steve Robinson, is going to join us. We was on 3 months ago and talked about a lot of the Chinese cartels in Maine. He's made a number of appearances since then. So we want to find out how much this word or this message is getting through to lawmakers and becoming more mainstream. So it's a fascinating conversation that we will indeed have with him, because let's face it, this administration needs to fully understand the law and order process as to what's going on behind the scenes regarding the Chinese drug cartels, among many other stories. So that should be a great, good conversation that we will have in our second segment here today. So let's welcome an AV on a Monday. Good to see you back. How was the trip?
It's great. Nice and quick.
Nice and quick. How was the weather down in Columbia?
It was sunny.
Surprise, surprise.
And humid. Same as South Florida.
Fun. Yeah, I had a good conversation with Wiz Buckley back on Friday, and I was talking to him about some of the stuff. But
saw that.
One thing he made very clear is that, hey, it looks real nice and it seems like a great PR angle, but I would not hold your breath about a rescheduling announcement happening around Veterans Day. So alert to everybody out there. I would be patient because
I shared my skepticism.
Yeah.
You promised it, by the way.
No,
Shad promised. You've been memed. You were memed on Twitter.
Here we go. Another meme going on Twitter. Henry, if you're with me, I can't wait to see the next one. That was it Jerry Springer or Maury Povich one? It's
Maury Povich. That was actually good that you were just you were right there in the crowd. It was good. I'd like to keep expectations low. If it happens on Veterans Day, it'd be great.
Yeah, it would be.
The government needs to get open, though. I don't think the government's going to be open in the next 15 days.
Yeah, I hear you.
It would be nice if it did, but that CR needs to get passed. And if it does get passed intact with the language around veterans' increased access to cannabis, I mean, there could be something that dovetails with it. But I'm not making that part of my thesis. I'm not getting my hopes up. And if it happens, it happens.
Yeah, I hear you. That's all we're going to talk about with that. So let's get into today's TDR Trade to Black podcast. But before we do that, just a quick word from Morgan & Morgan. Hey everyone, there's a reason investors get excited when a stock splits and suddenly feels twice as valuable. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. Think about it. When you're investing, you want the right team in your corner. The same is true if you're injured in dealing with an insurance company. And that is where Morgan & Morgan comes into the equation. Why? Well, they got more than 1,000 attorneys and over 100 offices nationwide. They've been fighting for the people for over 35 years. And their track record, get this, it's hard to ignore. Here's what I mean by that. One example, in Florida, a client was offered just $350,000, but walked away with $12 million. That would help the portfolio. In Pennsylvania, another client turned $650,000 into a $26 million offer. That's a 40x return. So in total, Morgan & Morgan has recovered more than $25 billion for over 500,000 clients. So when you hire them, it's like bringing in a legal army that has your back. Because if you're injured due to someone else's negligence, you deserve to be paid. And let's be honest, not all law firms are created equally. So with Morgan & Morgan, get this, their fee, it's free unless they win. You can start your claim right now by clicking the link in the description or by scanning this QR code on your screen with your phone. At the end of the day, if you want what you deserve, make sure you go in with the right team by contacting Morgan & Morgan today. All right, now let's get back to the rest of our live stream. All right, let's get to it here on a Monday. First segment, CEO of Rubicon Organics trades under the TSX venture ROMJ. Margaret, Brodie, back to the podcast. Fresh off a trip in Toronto last week, from what I heard. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And you can see I'm in my full site wear and at site in our boardroom trailer that's very glamorous today.
Nice.
And that's the way we like to be. It's Toronto is great, but it's so much fun to be out at site, seeing the plants and working with the team.
I'm sure. So what was this conference that took place? Because I know there was a few people in the space. Anthony Cogniglio from New Lake Capital was also there. But what was the event? And was there some decent people in the crowd?
Yeah, great question. It was the first time Planet Microcap has done something in Toronto. They do a big conference every year. I don't know if you
Right.
know, in Vegas.
Yep.
And I went in Vegas, and it was really well attended with people that are value investors that understand that there's real businesses out there that are created in the small cap space that have just been punished by the markets.
Yeah.
There's been this huge amount of capital into large cap companies in the last 5 years, and the small caps are really undervalued. So they decided to do an event in Toronto, and I got to say there were four or five cannabis companies there, and they were all Canadian, and you could feel the momentum of where we're going. And look, these are value investors.
Yeah, I bet.
Like they're less.
How is
They don't. Yeah, go ahead.
how is the sentiment, or how is the conversation around, or interest around cannabis? Like, were they interested? Did they see it as viable? Do they share in the same sentiment as it is a sector that's been beaten up and not truly trading from an efficient standpoint, let's say on a multiple basis?
So I had the opportunity to sit through sort of 2.5 hours of pitches, and I don't normally get to do that. We're usually busy.
Yeah.
It was just the way the agenda worked on the first day, and it was really interesting to see the growth companies there. I call it growth company, people that are growing 20% a year, and really are the companies that are at these conferences, and they hand select the list, and they're trading 10 to 12 times off of next year's EBITDA.
Wow.
And Canadian cannabis is trading, call it 5 to 7 off of last year's EBITDA. And so these value investors are going, well, your balance sheets are in pretty good shape. You're trading at what, right? Like this is the deal. And they're less concerned about all the history. It's about, where's the business today. There's a group of companies that are coming through. So I think it's about discovery.
Yeah.
And I think people that are coming in now are going to do really well in the next few years.
I bet. Well, your timing might have been really good, knowing that you received the Health Canada approval for your Cascadia facility in Hope, BC, rebranding the name. So as I said off the top, this boosts annual output by 40%, adds 4,500 kilograms of indoor grow cannabis. So it's a big operational leap. So what would you say, or what was the message that you say to us, to the people last week, as to what this license means and your strategic roadmap, I guess, and outlook moving forward?
It's awesome. We're in Transform as in 2025, looking to, Canada was in real price compression and pressure the last few years, and we're coming out of it. The shelf has been built. We have demand for considerably more product, not only in Canada, and we're talking premium product. There's a lot of demand if you've got premium branded product, and also the world. So we got this facility for $4.5 million. I know I've talked about it on here before.
You stole it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we didn't steal it.
I know, but trust me, I still think about my reaction when I saw the headline in the press release and I saw the price. I was like, well, it's a hell of a deal.
And it's Canadian dollars, so let me give you that little perspective as well. And our debt is at 6.75%. So we're sitting with a nice balance sheet today. But look, we've already completed the $1.5 million we said we'd put into it this year. The exciting thing is having plants in, and I can tell you today we have plants in at veg. So in a couple of weeks we'll be flipping and starting our first flowering cycle, and it's we're turning the facility on in the way that an operator does, because we're operators, which is planting out one section, and then when that comes down, there'll be room in the dry room for the next thing. So we don't go in and plant everything at once. That's not what an operator does. You plant it to live with it. But it's exciting. It's what's next for us, and we've got demand to fill it.
So
I was going to say, is there like an acclimation phase when you go into a new facility, or are you kind of using, let's say, SOPs and environmental parameters from your other grow and using that as a baseline to kind of break it in? Or are you starting from scratch due to it's an entirely new facility?
So,
or not new facility, but new facility to you.
Yeah. So I like to think of cannabis facilities like F1 race cars. Every one of them drives differently. And every one of them, if you put somebody who doesn't know how to drive the car, like if you put me in an F1 car, it probably would go nowhere. Right. Yeah. But if you put our team in a great purpose-built premium facility that has created premium before, statistically, we're realistic and pragmatic. The first few crops might not hit what we want. But
Fair,
but
that's fair.
we're pretty confident in terms of the plants acclimatizing. Yeah, look, like we've all taken a plant from the nursery home and watched it kind of sit there for a minute before it gets vigorous. But we know what we're doing with that, and so we had genetics ready. We were cutting clones and being ready for weeks because we knew we were very close with the license. And you just never know. It was always on a Friday that Health Canada gives licenses, so you're kind of waiting on Fridays. Like, is it this Friday? But we're running at it, and I think what's exciting is that people forget that plants and cannabis have been grown in a couple of ways, right? So a lot of Asia, Africa, and up and down the coast,
Yeah.
it's been planted outdoors, right? So there's outdoor harvest, and then there's indoor. And to get to the super premium new drops, unique cultivars, a lot of them have been grown in indoor environments, with lights and in smallish rooms. So we've got a ton of genetics that have done well in our facility, but we think sort of the Pacifica facility that's a hybrid greenhouse, and we can grow beautiful premium weed, and we've proven it time and time again. But this is a way we can put genetics that we just were like, I think there's more to it. We're going to put it in this new indoor facility, and we think with the right drivers behind the race car, we're going to be able to do some really exciting things.
I was reading actually, as we look at just the overall expansion output on an annual basis, one of our viewers, I'm just reading this real quick, we could ask about the oversupply problem. Last time she mentioned it had been stabilized. Is that still the case, Margaret?
Great question. So it certainly depends on which market you're talking about and where around the world. There's not enough premium weed, and there's not enough new premium facilities coming online, and there isn't new capital premium facilities. There was oversupply. It really cleared out. I would say we were in undersupply for the last 12 months in the Canadian environment. A lot of it because of the demand internationally. Then we saw recently, Germany hit its import max. They've now opened that back up again.
Okay.
So we're going to have this stop-start around the world. But our Cannabis Council, Mickey, likes to say there's never been enough good weed. And when I'm talking good weed, I'm talking fabulous genetics, weed that people really want to smoke, that elevates experiences. And so knowing that there's not net new premium facility coming around the world, that to us isn't, it obviously affects overall movements, but
I missed that part about Germany reaching their import max. How does that work?
Yeah, so there was a news story. Was it mid-September? Germany had allowed for a certain amount of imports into the country in 25. They actually hit that in September. And so everybody thought, oh, shoot, if you don't have an import permit, you're not getting your product imported. But like any regulator, they're like, we have a live market with medical patients with a need.
Yeah.
They went out and the last week they announced they've upped it again. So
all right.
There's a certain amount of importation. But you got to remember, when you're playing in these big global markets, moving product around, there's going to be things like this that happen.
Yes.
It's just normal.
Wanted to ask you, I was speaking to the Ford administration on Friday morning, and boy, did they make some people upset across the world. And I think Prime Minister Carney, who's in Asia, made his meetings with Mr. President Trump a little bit more difficult. But look, I heard there's rumors about them probably signing a trade deal, a massive one with China, which was tweeted out today. I don't know how much, I don't know if that's going to be accurate or not, or what that looks like. But yeah, I know you're kind of shaking your head, Anthony, but we have this big federal budget meeting basically coming up, announcement next week. What's your anticipation? Do you think anything regarding excise tax language will be mentioned at all during that? What are you seeing and hearing?
Well, if I knew, I wouldn't say, but I don't think so. Look, we're in a government that blew through its deficit and increased its debt in the last few years. We've got to be responsible the government's got to be responsible with not cutting any revenue opportunities. The Canadian cannabis sector contributed almost $30 billion since legalization. So what I think that we could ask for, I think there's things like some regulation and red tape cutting, which would reduce cost. I think some support for the economic sector could come. And I think there's some successful acknowledgement within the government that, cannabis is something it's driving, is driving a lot of opportunity for Canadian industry. But I also think, I'd love to go to government and say, hey, let us take half of the amount of excise and use it for nation building stuff. So new new innovation, R&D, hiring, CapEx, all that kind of stuff, rather than sending it to government, because I think it spurs and it creates a flywheel on the
It
industry, which is
does.
what we really need to do.
Is there a comparable excise tax in Canada that's applied to alcohol, similar
There
to what's
is.
applied to cannabis?
There is, but it's paid in a different way. So it's paid
Okay.
directly. Is it directly? I've forgotten exactly how it is, but I believe that the province pays to the feds that
They
way.
do. They
Okay.
do.
And there
I'm
is with
assuming it makes
tobacco as well.
sense. I'm assuming it makes more sense too from an economic perspective, the way that the industry works on the alcohol side versus what we got from inception on the cannabis side. The industry's evolved, and it kind of is not applicable. Well, it is still applicable, but it's onerous in its current form and hasn't been updated to match the current state of the industry.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion on that, and I've been having those discussions. I'm actually on Thursday in Ottawa on a day on the Hill. The Pearson Center, which is an Ottawa think tank, is hosting the cannabis industry, and we'll be talking to MPs and various things like various influential people in government. Very excited to have that opportunity. And look, I think they're listening. Our government understands how large this industry is.
Yeah.
I don't think that.
Do they though? Do they fully understand? Do they? Like that's the
Well,
thing where
understanding and stigma are two different things.
I know, right?
I mean, they definitely understand. They see the tax revenue coming in. They just don't care that it handicaps the LPs just from an economics perspective. That I don't think they care about, but they know that money's coming in and rolling in. That's being generated from the industry.
I think right now in Canada, there's a large view on the mega projects and the mega industries, whether it's mining, natural resources, et cetera. Forestry here in British Columbia, it's our number one industry. And then there's hospitality, tourism, all the rest of that, and innovation and investment. The government's got a lot to bite off and chew on in terms of those top sort of 3-4 industries, what they can do for Canada. We're lower down the list than that. I do think they'll get to us, but I think they're doing the right thing in tackling those first. I'd like to see, any capitalist, any entrepreneur is going to tell you, let's move faster, let's go quicker, let's build quicker, let's get things permitted, let's move forward as an industry, let's get more customers other than just the US from a reliance perspective.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to have that level of economic dependence on one big partner. And I think that's actually a positive out of all the things that have happened, is that it's forcing Canada to and our government to wake up and realize that we got to play ball and build and move projects forward.
It's a touchy subject, isn't it?
Doesn't mean we change the nature of who we are and what we do. And
I
I think
know.
that's the it's like anything. I mean, I like to say in our business, I can be quite fierce, but we can do it with a smile on our face. And
Yeah, I hear you.
my husband turns around and says, "That's not a smile. You're showing teeth."
Yeah. Well,
But
I hear you. Okay, so now you branded 2 facilities, Pacifica and Cascadia. For those that are learning more about this, how big are the facilities again for each one?
So we've got about 125,000 square feet here at Pacifica in Delta, BC, where I'm sitting today, on 20 acres of agricultural land reserve. It's about 15 minutes from the BC Distribution Center, which is fantastic.
Yep.
And we'll update you on a strike that just ended as well, announcement yesterday. And then Pacifica is about an hour and a half from here.
Nice.
It's a great location for us to successfully manage. It's 47,500 square feet, indoor facility. I love the name Cascadia. It's the beginning of the Cascade Mountains. This is right near the Pacific Ocean where we are today. And, I'd love to have even another 10,000 kilos of premium supply in the next few years. But for now, having production capacity of around 5,000 kilos is a great amount.
Where do you think of then? I know we've had a lot of conversations how a lot of companies have in Canada have, I don't want to say turn their back, but they've shifted their attention to the international markets. And there's a huge, big upside potential in Canada in their own backyard. When you look at capacity expansion of this size, does it still remain that? Do you look at international? Like, what are you viewing over these next 12 months?
I think we keep seeing there's not net new premium facility coming online, nor teams that know how to operate those facilities.
Okay.
I think there are fantastic people in the Canadian and international cannabis industry, but the discipline of consistently delivering a premium product is what's difficult.
Yeah.
And so I feel very comfortable and confident in our path forward. because we're doing what very few people have proven they can do time and time again. And
Yeah.
that's what builds a brand promise. So, the shelf in Canada, it's been built. If you're not on the shelf, the provinces continue to whittle away what they're listing. It's been interesting here in British Columbia. We've had a strike recently. We've just heard the trucks have started moving. The strike ended this morning. All of the cannabis distribution was shut down. But I'm very excited because we've had the amount of inbound that I've had from people saying, Margaret, you're in Ontario. Can you bring me back your products? How do I get your flower? Oh my gosh, I've gotten used to the good stuff. I can't go back. And
don't have to worry about interstate commerce in Canada, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely not.
Yeah, that's for sure. And look at old Mr. Raj Grover go. He's got 210 locations now across Canada, and it's kind of flirted the idea as to where he wants to be. So that's always helpful when you see companies like that in retail expanding and getting that obviously with your product on those shelves. But all in all, it's some good stories as we continue to talk about. Not as many, but that's okay in Canada. But the ones that are thriving and thriving well. But it's a really good angle what you say about premium product, and there's such a huge demand for it. Something that we've learned along the way, that the low cost producers was just a thing of the past, and this is where we're at this stage of the game, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was speaking I was in Berlin at ICBC in April, and I was speaking to a number of people there, and they, the international buyers will just take product at any cost. Now, already in 6 months, it's starting to change. Oh, we don't have premium product. We don't have consistent premium product. And the word consistent is something, they say, well, cannabis grows like a weed. Well, it does. But to grow it well consistently is not that easy. And to grow strains and products that people love and want and will come back to is the magic sauce. And so, every market will develop like a portfolio of craft beer or whiskey, or even, I would like to say fashion, because I think the new news and trend in premium is really important. Kind of like the way Supreme drops, has product drops. It's available. You run down to the store, there's a huge lineup, and then it's gone. I think, we're doing the same thing with the genetics that we're bringing out. We're very excited about. And there's a long way to go with where cannabis is going to go in the world.
Well, great to see that you got your Health Canada license. So it's onwards and upwards. So best of luck moving forward. Love the update on the story. And we'll have you on in a couple weeks, latest earnings as well, and get a recap of that. So we'll probably follow up with you in probably 2 to 3 weeks. All right.
Awesome. Love it. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Thanks, Margaret. Appreciate your time.
Okay.
Really good story there. And hey,
it's great. I trust any CEO on brand that drops a Supreme reference in an interview. So
good point. Good point.
She knows what she's talking about.
Yeah. TDR's Trade to Black podcast presented by Dutchie here on a Monday. Shad Dale's here with Anthony Varrell, and I was going to do a live read, but I misplaced my notes, so we'll skip on that one. Anyway, it's now time for segment number 2, and this is going to be a good one, which welcome back the editor-in-chief of the Maine Wire, Steve Robinson, to the live stream. Good to see you, sir. Happy Monday. How are things?
Oh, fantastic. How are you guys?
Good. And looks like, it's been 3 months since you really shed a lot of light on what's going on in your own backyard of Maine. And I think the most important thing we wanted to have on today, or talk to you about today, was just how's that developing? Is this getting through? I've seen you make more appearances on more podcasts, but all in all, do you think this is getting through to the right people and really shedding a light as to what's going on, not only in Maine, but across a lot of states in the U.S.?
Well, I don't think it's getting through at the state level. For whatever reason, the state politicians seem pretty enamored with the status quo and want to protect the status quo. But I think you saw earlier, I guess on Friday, a huge bipartisan group of state attorneys general signed a letter calling on Congress to close the hemp loophole. The letters to Congress, they don't really do much. It's not like Congress is going to read those and be like, oh, I guess we better act. But it does give a signal to state lawmakers, and it gives a sense of the attitude that people have towards closing this up. And to have something like the hemp loophole, which is very difficult to understand. It's something that takes a little bit of time to explain to a policymaker, to their staff, to understand exactly the impact that this has on states like Maine, where cannabis is legal, or states like the Carolinas, where it's illegal. but it's a loophole that's having nefarious consequences for every single state. It's just a complicated thing to explain to people, and to have a letter with all these attorneys general signing off on it suggests that finally the idea is breaking through. And I think that you are going to see some action from Congress in at least modifying the definition of hemp in a way, perhaps to get rid of floral hemp, but it'll tighten up or reduce the ability of.
Wow. You think that's going to happen then?
Go ahead.
You think that's indeed going to happen then?
Yes, I do. I think that the language changing the definition of hemp, that change will be made. And so I think it's going to eliminate some of the market incentives, perverse market incentives that have allowed for these products to be created. I mean, when you think about it, these intoxicating hemp products don't exist because people like them or there's a demand for them. It's just a loophole.
Yeah.
They found a way to exploit a loophole, and people on the margins, the lower end consumers, are using these products like, THCP joints or intoxicating hemp products because they're cheap and they kind of get the job done. But without that loophole, none of these products would exist. And as a result of the loophole, there's all kinds of other unintended consequences, like intoxicating products being sold at gas stations and convenience stores where maybe they card, maybe they don't, maybe the person selling the product speaks English, but probably not. So I think that there's going to be a bipartisan group of people in support of making this little change.
So since we last spoke, I mean, you've been platformed. I mean, you've been on a national level on media. I mean, the word's really gotten out. I'm assuming it's been just amplified far and wide. How has the response been to your work and what you've been shining a light on? Has it actually elicited a conversation in people? Have people been reaching out to you to get better educated on it? Because this is a very nuanced and difficult issue that I feel like a lot of people in the offices that need to understand don't understand, and they could easily comprehend what's going on if they were just listening to the work that you're getting put in, the work that you're putting in, and the light that you're really shining on the fuckery that really is going on within the hemp industry, not much less what's going on in Maine.
Yeah, I think people are listening, and I think they're listening in Washington, D.C., and I've had phone calls with staff, both in the Trump administration as well as congressional staffers, reaching out, to get more information and learn more and become educated about the topic. I think this was a huge blind spot for people.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people just kind of write it off into this category of, oh, that's just drug policy. I was on Fox News the other day, and the host is talking about, Delta 8 as if it's some totally different substance from cannabis or hemp, and compares it to potential future versions of meth or cocaine or something. So even in the media at the high levels, there's this just a lack of information about these products and the downstream consequences of it. That's really the important thing, is the downstream consequences of the hemp loophole, which is the broader availability of intoxicating hemp products that are untested, unregulated, and available really at some of the shadiest places. I mean, there are gas stations in Maine where I wouldn't buy a can of Coke, and they're selling smokable products and hemp products. I got one that I gave to Sean Ryan was a THCP joint, and I tried to follow the certificate of the analysis QR code on the back of it, and it goes to a lab in Kentucky that won't answer any of my emails. And when you go look for the address that's on the certificate of analysis, it takes you to a field out in Colorado. So it's like a fictitious business that doesn't even exist, and yet it has this certificate of analysis. So the entire industry is built on exploiting a loophole, but then there's all kinds of fraud and corporate misbehavior on top of that. So I think sewing up the loophole, the hemp loophole, it really doesn't have a huge amount of downsides unless you're a hemp producer who knows that your bread and butter is these intoxicating hemp products. But I think the average cannabis consumer, if you ask them, would you prefer to have a nice, clean, regulated cannabis product, or this like dodgy hemp oil that came out of the back of a 18-wheeler truck, that was driven all the way across the country because of different, jurisdictions and loopholes? I think people would go with the clean cannabis.
So walk me through what the other side looks like then. If they actually change the language in all this, what do you think we're looking at once that language is actually implemented, and how much of this loophole will indeed get closed?
Well, there's a couple of different versions of the legislation that are kicking around. I'm not privy to the I guess the negotiations within the Republican caucus. I know that there is a very strong element of Republican donors who don't want the hemp loophole closed.
No, they don't.
That's how this came into being in the first place. I mean, there are people who think that this was, the hemp loophole was this totally unintended, unforeseeable consequence of legalizing hemp, but I don't really buy that. I don't think that the people who pushed for the hemp loophole to be created were interested in hempcrete and hemp rope and hemp t-shirts. That's not what this was all about. And they're still around, and they're still making donations to politicians. So there's going to be a cohort of Republicans that tries to protect this loophole for the benefit of their constituents and their political donors.
Yeah.
So just how aggressive this change can be, I don't know, but one thing that we know for sure is that the people who are in this industry and know the science, they can see around corners in a way that members of Congress and their staff can't. So they can see changes in legislation and say, oh, this is going to allow us to continue to manufacture this product, or this is going to allow us to exploit this loophole. And members of Congress aren't always privy to that, and they're doing a million other things. So I would expect that you'll see something that makes life more difficult for the intoxicating hemp industry, but it's not going to get rid of it altogether. What would get rid of it altogether is more of a national framework, like a moving marijuana down to a Schedule 3 or something like that. That's how you ameliorate the exploitation of the hemp loophole in a big way. And it's also, by the way, how you would deal with some of the foreign cartels, like the Chinese gangs that are exploiting Oklahoma, Maine, and California. They're doing that because of the patchwork of legislation. We've created a system that rewards the least ethical actors, the people willing to engage in criminal behavior, and a national framework would, I guess, do away with that incentive and level the playing field so that the cartels don't have such a competitive advantage.
Do any of the politicians, or let's say even any of the people from the federal government that you're speaking to, do they fundamentally understand that if you take a hemp-derived THC product that via the Farm Bill is legal by federal definition, and a cannabis-derived THC product that's produced by, let's say, a licensed operation in Florida, that molecularly they are the same product? That THC, that's just being governed by two completely different sets of rules, yet it is the exact same molecule?
If they listen to my episode with Sean Ryan, they do. If they listen to the Dales Report, they do. I would say it's a mixed bag. It's like 50-50. What I've tried to tell people is it's like if in this country we regulated alcohol not by the substance or the molecule, but by what it was made from. So corn whiskey was regulated differently from potato vodka. It just doesn't make any sense at all. And again, it's perverse incentives creating this entire economy that has now become rich and dependent on that loophole continuing to exist. Just like, there's a powerful set of economic interests that benefit from keeping the status quo as it is. There's a group of people who like the patchwork because they can arbitrage the system. They can grow in legal states and move it to gray markets or black markets in other states and sell at a premium. So obviously they're going to spend their money, or they're going to encourage politicians to preserve that status quo. I happen to think that the status quo kind of sucks because I live in a state that's been taken over by the Chinese mafia, and they're ruining all of our houses. And oh, by the way, they're using human slaves. So we're on the brunt end of this. We're like the growing area that's supplying the cannabis that's being enjoyed in Florida, where they defeated recreational cannabis. Well, I've got news for Governor DeSantis. They're still smoking a shit ton of marijuana in Florida, regardless of how happy they are that they defeated that referendum.
Yeah, we had Senator Rand Paul on back in September, and I don't know. I just was a little not surprised, but just a little disappointed on how, I don't know.
Well, his statements were so misinformed, I'll say, to be polite, that he was villainizing Delta 8 when we were talking about synthetics and like THCA flower. every time I talked about, let's say, illicit products being sold into the hemp channels, he would revert back to, well, these Delta-8 products are what's harming people, and these Delta-8 products are what we need to get out of the system. If anything, I would argue that Delta-8 might be the only synthetic that has an argument that it should be in the marketplace, as it's a less psychoactive derivative of Delta-9 THC. The HHC, the THCP, Delta Zero, I'm sure they're coming up with more of them by the day. That's all the stuff that is dangerous.
Yeah,
easily accessible.
I saw the entire Rand Paul segment, and I have to say I felt the same way. I'm a lifelong Rand Paul fan. I'm with him on 99% of the Rand Paul. I mean the libertarian stuff, but he sounded like a fucking moron talking about cannabis products, just totally out there, which is weird because he's one of the main authors of the hemp loophole in the first place to protect what we're what we're told is the backbone of Kentucky farming.
That's my point. These hemp farmers. I wanted to bring this up.
He's got a hemp pack too behind him now. That's very well capitalized.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's like what we saw in Maine with the legalization of cannabis. We opened the floodgates for a pig race for $10 billion in market share, and people are willing to do all kinds of crazy things in order to get the biggest slice of that pie, whether it's bribing politicians or setting up illegal grows or maximally exploiting what they believe to be the legal way of doing things. And you're seeing that in other states as well. That's the entire story of the hemp loophole, really, is people exploiting the way they see the laws are. Yeah. And sure, I think some of them will feel like they were rug pulled. But if Senator Paul really thought about it, he would understand that the libertarian perspective on this is to let the market decide and not have little hemp legalization changes here and carve outs here based on a percentage of THC tested at some point in the plant's life cycle. The libertarian perspective would be just a national framework, and then people can decide what they want for a product. And I think 99% of consumers, you wouldn't even have to worry about Delta-8 or Delta-10 or THCP. No one's going to choose those products because they're synthetic garbage and they make you sick. People are just going to choose good old-fashioned regular cannabis that people have been smoking for thousands of years.
Yep. We're on the same page.
Yeah, I agree there. Well, to your point, Anthony, and the reason why I brought this up, Steve, is that I got the impression that, yes, Senator Paul is being backed, and this is not as easy as it looks now because certain people like these loopholes, and it's just like, how do you fix this now? Because it seems like it's becoming a lot bigger than what this was originally supposed to be as far as like a fix, or I don't want to say an easy fix, but does it become more and more complicated as time goes on? That's why I'm curious to see what this language will look like.
But I mean,
what we'll see on the other side, right?
Investigative journalism, like with what Steve's done, what Dank's done, what I actually did in person, you can make an argument that if they want to talk about the hemp farmers, the stuff you're buying on Instagram and the stuff you're buying on Twitter that's saying, oh, we're shipping THC flower direct to your door, it's all coming from Colorado, California, Oregon, and Washington on the West Coast. Yeah. Those aren't guys that are growing hemp. That's inverted legal product, and it's illicit product that's just being sold under the guise of THCA flower.
Yeah.
And that's 99% of it.
Steve, you know what's also wild is that Anthony and I were having a conversation with some representatives from Oklahoma, and they were issuing out some of these medical marijuana licenses that were like $2,500, and they were handing them out to Chinese drug cartels for $75,000. And like, this starts to run a lot deeper than what we think. And that's concerning. And I'm sure you're aware of this.
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning of my investigation into the Chinese marijuana cartels in Maine, I've tried to resist the urge of saying, well, you know, the reason why this is happening is because all the politicians are bought off and bribed, because I felt like that would be kind of just a lazy, cynical answer. But the longer I investigate this and the longer I look at the problem, the harder it becomes to avoid the idea that this is happening because people in power want it to continue to happen and are benefiting from it happening. And we know that the governor of Maine, who just declared that she's running in the Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate, running up against Senator Susan Collins, her brother has worked as a real estate attorney for illicit Chinese cannabis traffickers. I mean, that's documented, proven. I've interviewed him about it. We have recordings of the interview up on our X page. You can hear him, sputter and stumble as I ask him about the, his Cantonese speaking clients. And now she hasn't said a word about this huge criminal conspiracy that has developed entirely on her watch. She was inaugurated in January of 2019. And that's when the entire Chinese drug cartel took off in Maine. She hasn't said a single word about it. She's told the state police to stand down because they're not involved in any of the enforcement, and her brother's involved in it. Now, is there outright money being paid to bribe politicians? I don't even know if it's that severe. I think the bribery is probably on a smaller scale, paying code enforcement officers $5,000 to look the other way. Local police, that kind of thing. But we do know of one case that is really spectacular and speaks to the amount of money that these guys have to throw around to grease the skids for what they're doing. Back at the beginning of Maine's legal marijuana program, we had a residency requirement. You had to be a resident of Maine in order to get a license to participate in either the adult use or the medicinal program. It's since been struck down in a court case, but while it was still in existence, there was a guy named Mervyn Yan. And Mervyn was, he's an employee of CEFC Energy. And some of the political people in the audience might remember this because CEFC Energy, through Mervyn Yan, paid the Biden family over $1.5 million for consulting advice, whatever Hunter Biden provides for advice. The same Mervyn Yan who was paying Hunter and James Biden $1.5 million paid a 60-year-old woman in northern Maine, up in Aroostook County, $100,000 so that she would go get fingerprinted and be the signatory on an application for a Tier 4 adult use marijuana grow up in the middle of nowhere, Maine. And it never came to fruition, but Mervyn, he's a stand-up guy, even though he's a CCP spy, he still paid out the entire $100,000. This woman admitted this to me on the phone, by the way, but it just goes to show the amount of money these people have to throw around on the off chance that one of these cannabis businesses come to fruition. And you have to imagine that if we know about these few examples here in Oklahoma or up in Stacyville, Maine, who else is taking that money? And we just don't hear about it.
So when we look at this, I think people want to understand that watch your podcast, be like, okay, guys, drum this down. What does this mean as far as modified language and the rescheduling of cannabis? People want to see what you're doing. They want to see the story, the narrative being advanced to getting through to the right people. And I think, I'm not going to ask you whether you think rescheduling does happen, but do you think a lot of this information, do you have any idea if it's getting through to the Trump administration and they're becoming more well-informed on this?
Oh, I think the information is definitely getting through and they're becoming more well-informed on it for sure. But I would say, my position, and I don't have any, investments whatsoever in the marijuana sector for a reason. I think that descheduling is not going to be some huge boon to the industry. I think that if anything, it'll just collapse, the price of all the stocks further because it's just going to become an absolute free-for-all. I think there's going to be so much overproduction and such a supply glut that any of the companies that have carved out some kind of a marketing niche, they're going to have way too much competition if it's descheduled. And the premier brands will always have like some niche market, but you're basically going to be looking at, it's going to be like light beer. You're going to have Bud Light, Coors Light. You're going to have value Bud versus value weed, whatever. Just mega brands competing in a race to the bottom.
For sure.
So I think it's very difficult to predict the effect that rescheduling is going to happen. We have it kind of de facto, but I do think that the Trump administration is listening. But there are a lot of hoops to jump through in order to make it happen. And I think that they're probably looking at some bigger changes, like moving 7-OH into the Schedule 1, and they're looking at some other changes as well. And I don't think that they're going to do anything with regard to cannabis scheduling that would undermine their ability to come in and combat some of the Asian transnational criminal organizations that are making oodles and oodles of money illegally growing and trafficking this stuff. So until they crack down on that problem, I don't see them making the scheduling change.
You've had a pretty cool tour. You met some pretty cool people the last few months. What would you say?
Yeah, I'm not a cannabis blogger or a cannabis journalist. I just kind of stumbled into this because I didn't like the fact that there was a foreign gang ruining my state, and I still don't. But it has been, an interesting time. And you know what? I would say the biggest outpouring of reaction actually came in response to Sean Ryan and I's conversation about 7OH. I was blown away by the number of people who reached out to me with their own story of addiction and recovery, but also the number of people and the dank informer. He and I were having some margaritas and talking about this the other day. The number of people are underestimating the number of products on the market that are 7OH combined with THC oil or hemp oil. Kush.com had a few of those available that you could buy in kilo quantities, but I've gotten stories from people who purchased in Florida, in Massachusetts, legal states, illegal states, vape products from large brands that I won't name, and later had to be revived with Narcan. They thought that they were just smoking a hemp intoxicant or a pure regular old THC product, but it was in fact laced with a vapable form of 7OH. And they had no intention to use a hard opiate drug, but they were deceptively, I guess, marketed to and purchased it. And I've heard stories too from, people, minors, 17-year-olds who buy vapes on Snapchat, thinking that they're getting a product that is just marijuana, and then the same thing happens. They end up hooked, or they are, revived with Narcan. So the 7OH mixed with the THC oil is a huge, huge problem.
Yeah.
And hopefully that could be addressed too if you had a national framework where you can actually study and regulate this stuff.
Yeah. We lost your camera there. We still got your audio. I don't know if your camera went off, but
funny, because I was actually talking about this with somebody this morning from a hemp trade organization on the category of synthetics, that really the consumer has absolutely no idea what's truly in there. And it is a gamble every time someone is going and buying any of these synthetic vapes, because a lot of these companies that we've seen, I mean, Dank's called it out. I've called it out pretty early on the 7OH stuff. You look like a company like, I'll just say their name. I mean, Cheech and Chong, they make synergistic products now that have THC, 7OH, Amanita muscaria, all mixed into one. I think they have hash bricks that are THC and 7OH infused.
Yeah.
That people can combust and smoke.
Sorry, that was the 7OH lobby is getting my camera and turning it off, trying to sabotage this. Either that or the Chinese. I don't know.
We're getting the comments right here. Chinese bots are now coming in, but yeah, I hear you.
Hey, you joke, but I actually saw we saw an uptake of DDoS tax on TheManWire.com after the Sean Ryan episode dropped.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
They're paying attention to Sean's show for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
That doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Like, I applaud obviously the information that you're doing and the research and, investigating, reporting that you're doing. I think people really want to see how a lot of this sheds light. And, at the end of the day, we want 75% of Americans want cannabis reform. And hopefully it's dialogue like this that you continue to learn gets through to the right people, and we get some sort of decision and direction, because right now they're just, we were doing some stuff last week on 3 states going in 3 different directions. And that right then and there, it's like, we need dialogue and direction from Washington, and it's just long, long overdue. And I feel like the difference between today and say even 3-4 years ago is that we're now starting to really understand how much of a problem is even beyond just the headlines. And this is happening day to day.
Yeah, I think that the people in Maine and the legal cannabis growers, they just want fairness.
Yeah.
And I've interviewed so many legal, law-abiding, ethical cannabis growers who've got facilities that you could eat off the floor. They're so clean, and they're proud of their product, and they care about their customers.
For sure.
And they're being put out of business by illegal competition, because, if they post on Instagram, a snarky comment about the director of the Office of Cannabis Policy, they'll have a surprise inspection 2 days later. But this same operation can't figure out how to inspect people that they know and have admitted they know are affiliated with organized crime. So you've got people who aren't paying taxes, aren't paying their laborers, or using pesticides, or engaged in illegal interstate sales. They have these huge competitive advantages, and they're driving legal, law-abiding, ethical players out of the business. And actually, one of the guys that I spoke with for the documentary that we made with Tucker is no longer in business. The guy's a Bosnia vet who suffers from PTSD, and he was making clean cannabis products primarily for veterans. And he got debanked. He lost his insurance, and now he's got a facility that's $1 million high-tech marijuana growing facility that he can't use because he can't get insurance, he can't get access to banking, and he was just driven into bankruptcy in part because of how low the price is and how expensive electricity is here in the state of Maine. And I think you're going to see that to continue. People are going to be forced out of business if you don't level the playing field.
Dino Sestito, Shad and Anthony, you both agree with Steve that rescheduling will essentially destroy the current industry?
No.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Steve said descheduling, not
D.
rescheduling. Descheduling, if the federal government, just hypothetically speaking, descheduled cannabis tomorrow, being completely frank, the MSOs would be fucked completely if interstate commerce opened up, those limited license markets, the moat fell, and then the big boys on the West Coast with compliant product, obviously, were allowed to export across the entire United States. The price of cannabis would fall precipitously, the walls would come down, and the free market would be allowed to transact.
Yeah.
In a descheduled world, rescheduling, no. I mean, it's not going to blow up the industry. But yes, descheduling would kill Trulieve, GTI, a lot of the big boys. Not kill, but would force them to evolve. They would need to go buy large-scale outdoor growers and or get out of the cultivation business altogether.
Yes.
And just leave it as a retail business and a branded products business, because there will be, like Steve said, the value buds, the X, Y, and Z that are the Coors Light, Bud Light, Pabst Blue Ribbon that sell the bulk of cannabis to consumers. But there's also Moet Hennessy. There's also Johnny Walker. There's also very high quality things, which I do think will still have a place in the market, but those are going to be craft. They're probably going to also be regional that have those grows. But descheduling is going to be, if it happens in the short term, very, very, very disruptive, and it will transform the industry into something that is not conducive to the current business plans and business models of the operators that people are currently invested in.
Yeah, I think what people want to hear right now is that it won't be destroyed. It's going to evolve. And that is the reality. That's why I've said in a couple of videos that take a picture, because if there is reform, rescheduling, followed by banking, and then in the case of descheduling, there's going to be a supply will be oversupply in the US. There'll be a lot of players. And you saw the same thing happen in Canada. And there was a shakedown, and now there's,
but there's also some ambiguity there, because even if they do deschedule it, there's been talk of states being able to opt into interstate commerce via treaties between markets if they wanted to. I could tell you for damn sure Florida is not going to allow interstate commerce and allow just California cannabis to be imported into the state just the way that it's set up. They'll protect the MMTCs that are here. But that model will be greatly disrupted.
Yeah. Well, I guess the question is, what is the price of cannabis absent any government intervention and any government regulation? It's basically like the price of corn, right?
Correct.
It's just a big market commodity, so not very expensive. It's going to rely on really probably your advertising and your branding is going to be the strength, just like any market where the products are basically the same. But I do agree with you that there'll be the high-end Hennessy types or the Grey Gooses. But if you look at volume, what's more consumed in America by volume, Grey Goose or Colt 45?
Colt 45 probably smokes it. I've always said I'd like to own a brand like a Grey Goose or like a Moet Hennessy, but at the same time, Bud Light sells a hell of a lot more beer.
Yeah.
At scale than any of those brands.
Colt 45, Steve, going way back. Do you remember those commercials with Billy D. Williams?
I don't know if I'm that old. No.
Yeah,
I am.
Who's Billy D. Williams?
Yo, Billy, show me come with you. Oh man, they used to have all these great ads. He was like the life of the party, and he was just cruising around his Colt 45.
But,
All right,
you know,
gents.
yeah, hey, I'll just say, even if you do get to that miracle promised land where the MSOS gang wants to go, I don't know that it gets rid of the Chinese cartels. I don't know that it gets rid of the bad actors, because hey, if you can use slaves and pesticides, you've still got a competitive advantage.
Yeah, but I do agree with you there, but I don't think that product's not viable though to be sold into a regulated market, because it'll never pass lab testing, and it'll never get into it'll never be able to penetrate a seed to sale tracking model. I think that the illicit market's always going to be around. I don't see a world in where the illicit market is completely eradicated by taking cannabis out of prohibition like they did with alcohol.
Yeah.
Cannabis is much easier to grow and sell than alcohol is to produce and then distribute and then do the same thing with that.
Yeah.
I think the illicit market is going to be around forever. It's just a function of what's the size, and are consumers going to still be compelled to buy it if they can get a safe, tested, regulated, cheap alternative from a trusted source.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think? Do you think President Trump will indeed announce cannabis rescheduling? Do you believe that will happen?
Well, it's a tricky one, because on his personal life experience, he's had only negative experiences with drugs and alcohol, and he, more than any presidents of the past, has I think based his policy decisions on his personal life experience and his gut feeling. So he's got a negative outlook towards drugs, but I think that having RFK Jr. as a trusted advisor when it comes to some of these health things, I think he could be persuaded, and I think that he'll listen to his kids as well. So I think that he will be forward-looking, and I also think that there's a part of him that wants to be better in certain directions than Barack Obama was supposed to be. Like, Barack Obama was supposed to be decriminalizing and leading to less incarceration. And you saw during the president's first term, he issued some commutations and some pardons for drug offenders in a way that was very much making a statement of like, I'm the justice president. I represent the forgotten men and women. Yeah. And I think that there's an argument to be made that this could be part of his legacy by fundamentally changing not just the drug markets or the marijuana markets, but also the jail system, the incarceration system.
Agreed.
By refocusing our laws. Because if you look at what they're doing, they're very laser focused on things like fentanyl. I mean, laser focused literally, like blowing up boats with the space lasers to the point that they're focused on them.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a good chance that he sees it as a legacy building initiative to change the way this country thinks about cannabis, even though he himself is not a cannabis user. And you know what? You might even be able to credit, at the end of the day, his conversations with people like Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn, because I'm sure they've talked to him and given him their perspectives on cannabis and helped educate him. And he is a guy who can change his mind and be educated on things. As much as people like to, pigeonhole him and talk about a caricature of Trump rather than the person himself, he does listen, he does learn, he does change his mind, and we've seen that over the last 8 years.
Is Tucker Carlson indifferent about it all?
I think Tucker Carlson is, I wouldn't want to speak for him. I think he's just more or less anti-drug personally.
Yeah.
Having done a lot of personal research in the field, he's now, anti-drug. And you know what? I think that there's very real concerns about people who use cannabis too much at too young of an age. But you really can't. You can't have a nuanced conversation about the proper way that cannabis can be used if you're saying it's black or white. Like, I think we can all agree that DARE was an abject failure. I just saw a piece in it was one of the California newspapers about a guy who'd had like 6 open heart surgeries because he was using fentanyl so much and kept getting his heart infected. And there's a picture of him shooting up fentanyl, and he's wearing his DARE shirt. And I was like, geez, that's yet another reminder that the DARE program of complete abstinence was a total failure.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say that if you had a national framework around cannabis use, there could be more education in the same way that it is with alcohol. I mean, even when I was in high school, it was easier for us to get weed than it was alcohol by
100%.
far.
Yeah.
So why not treat them both
Really?
the same way?
I'm showing my age then. Complete opposite for me.
And the weed was better too. Back when we were smoking the Snickle Fritz and the Mexican ditch weed, man. I like that stuff.
Yeah. Listen,
everybody had a boy that sold weed in high school. If you grew up in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. Listen, this has been great. I'm going to throw it out there, but if you got time to come on, like say every other week, we'd love to have you and have these conversations going, because I think there's a lot of value that you could bring to our platform, and just, at the same time too, shed light more and more on what you're doing day in and day out. But this has been very, very helpful, and I applaud with what you're doing, and more importantly, keep at it. All right.
All right. Thanks, guys. Yeah. If I've got something important to say, I'll definitely come on, but I don't want to come on and just talk about welfare reform in the state of Maine or lobsters or something. I do report on other stuff from time to time.
Lobsters. Can you imagine that segueing? All right, so now going to our second segment with Steve Robinson. We're talking about lobsters and how good is a 1 pound lobster versus a 2 pound. Let's get into it. Anyway, appreciate your time again, and let's keep in touch. Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Right, thanks, Steve. Yeah, great work. Very good work.
Yep.
Him, Dank Informer. Dank, if you're out there, good to see you, my friend. But all in all, good little podcast here today on a Monday, and just getting some education and some direction. So all is quiet right now. I looked at the markets, and yeah, it's pretty quiet right now, but it is what it is. And we continue to obviously put together a show that sheds light on what we're seeing and hearing. I know a lot of people right now just want questions, and may not be the answers that you want related around cannabis reform, but at the same time too, it's lobsters, writes Tom Angel, but may not be what you want to hear right now, but at least we keep some dialogue going, which is the whole goal. So anything else you want to add here today, my friend?
I'm good. Let's get the government back open.
No kidding. Somebody wrote down Canada legalized weed 7 years ago, and here they are 7 years later in the World Series. Should be a good game tonight. That Dodgers team's insane, though. You don't really watch baseball that much, but holy cow. Yamamoto.
Yoshi?
Yamamoto? Is that his
Yoshi.
name? What a pitcher.
I haven't watched a single pitch.
Dude, he would throw 74 mile per hour breaking balls that would start right down the middle, and every single time it would drop right around the shin. So you're either swinging and missing, or you're fouling the ball off your shin. And then he would throw a 99 miles per hour fastball right after that, right around the chest. And I'm like, insane how he can vary from 74 to 99 miles per hour. Great pitcher.
I was kind of rooting for the Blue Jays because I thought it'd be funny if you guys won a World Series before you brought a Stanley Cup back to Canada. But at the same time, I want the Dodgers to win. They showed all the Toronto Maple Leaf players showing up to the game the other night, and just their whole demeanor and the way they walk. God, they look Vladdy. The one thing I did see is game one, Vladdy wore, I think, an Austin Matthews jersey, which I don't know if I would be wearing a Maple Leafs jersey going into the championship round of my respective sport. But they got the job done in game one.
David, you're right. The Dolphins did win this week. Why? Because Kirk Cousins started for the Atlanta Falcons. What a horrible game.
Fins looked good yesterday for once. Yeah. Maybe they're not completely terrible.
Cole Memo, thank you, sir. Appreciate the super chat, and thank you for bringing that up, Arns. And very, very nice of you to do that. I know you were talking highly about the Cowboys, but I told you that defense is horrific, and that was bad.
Watch Joe Flacco and the Bengals. Oh no, they lost this week.
They lost to the Jets.
They lost to the Jets. So
Buffalo Bills, they looked good from coming off of a bye week. That was good.
Didn't really watch too much football yesterday, other than a couple plays of the Dolphins game.
Packers came out and strong in the second half, but
my fantasy team, though, I lost Cam Scatabo after that crazy injury. So
yeah, it's tough. I got a parlay tonight. It's my last leg. I got to have the Chiefs win by a touchdown at home against Washington, which I think they should do because Jaden Daniels is out and Mr. What's his name? Marcus Mariota starting. He's garbage. So anyway,
played pretty good the last time he backed up Daniels.
Dodgers should move back to Brooklyn, New York. I've heard about this story that people are still to this day upset that they left Brooklyn. But anyways, listen, it was good to have everybody here today. Anthony, good to see you back here Wednesday. Trying to think of who we have set up here for later this week. There is actually a former Wall Street analyst that reached out to me late last week. So we're trying to set down. He's thinking now is the perfect time to invest in cannabis. So this should be an interesting conversation. We'll keep you posted if we're having him on Wednesday or later this week. So keep your eyes peeled on that. And I think that's pretty much it. There was something else I was just going to say, but it totally slipped my mind. But anyways, we'll be back here Wednesday at 4:00. Thanks for checking everybody. For AV, I'm Shad Dales. This has been Trade to Black, presented by Dutchie. We'll see you back here on Wednesday. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey everyone, thanks again for watching here today. Listen, if you're getting value from us here at TDR, make sure to check us out at TDR Plus. It's our exclusive membership community. Why? Well, you'll see CEO interviews that go beyond business, showing a personal side that you won't find anywhere else, including the biggest names of the industry. Plus, you'll get insights from analysts and day traders on where the industry's headed, both short-term and long-term, and a direct chat group with our team. It's only $7 a month, just 25 cents a day, and it helps support everything we do here at TDR. If you want to join, just click the join button below and become a TDR Plus member today. And once again, a big thank you for being part of our community. So that's it for today. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.